Welcome back to National Geographic, and here we've found ourselves face to face with the Scythe player in its natural habitat. The Scythe player is a very aggressive species. It is known to rapidly attack anything that comes across its path. Another commonly known fact is that Scythe players hate being around other Scythe players, except they're around them all the time because there's so goddamn many of them. Truly, this is a species to look out for. You never know when the Scythe player might appear and give you a 0 to death.
Don't let your kids watch it!
So, you want to play the Scythe. There are several reasons why you might be here. For one, you might be here because the rank season just reset and you thought to yourself, hey, I think I'll learn a new weapon. If that's the case, then you're in the right place. Or maybe you're here because one too many Mordexes 3-stocked you last season and you thought to yourself, it's about time that I learn to use this weapon. If that's the case, then you're in the right place. Or maybe it's none of those things and you're just here because I uploaded a video and you wanted to watch it. If that's the case, thank you for being a supporter of this channel. Before I start this guide, let me drop the facade now and just let you know that I've never made a guide before, so for all I know, this might suck. And it will be a little bit different than most guides I've seen, so feel free to hate it, I don't really care. As someone who's played Scythe for almost 5 years now, I thought I'd just share my knowledge as best I can. So, without further ado, here we go. This is a Scythe guide by the one and only Professor TrippedUp. But before you play the Scythe, you need to learn about the Scythe. So, allow me to teach you of the great history of the Scythe. Now, the time period in which the Scythe was invented is not exactly clear, but we know exactly who made it. The Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper was the only one to use the Scythe for a long period of time because no one thought it was an efficient tool for killing. Because of this, in 2012, a miniature version of the Scythe called the Sickle was invented in the game Heyday, and it was used as an agricultural tool. And then Mordex got his hands on a Scythe, and honestly it was all downhill from there. And yeah, that's about it for the very true and extensive history of the Scythe. You're welcome. Alright, now that you're all studied up, it's time to get into the actual guide. Okay lads, let's start with the basics here. So of course we have the individual moves on their own. So we have Neutral Light, a very good attack for attacking. No, seriously though, it is a very good vertical move. As you can see, it covers a very good area in front of your legend, so you can kind of like, you know, defend yourself. And also start strings very easily, but I'll get into that later. We got Side Light, very fast move, and it can also lead into many strings, just like honestly any move with Scythe. Then we have D-Light, very, like, a lot of range on this move. As you can see, you kind of grab people from afar, so it's also surprisingly one of the better killing moves for Scythe. I say that, but honestly, it's pretty bad, but it's better than everything else because Scythe cannot kill. Moving on to the air moves, we got Nair, which is kind of like a hook of sorts. You kind of grab people. You like this, you can grab them. We have Sair, very good kill move for Scythe, pretty fast. Very fast, actually. And a good amount of force to it, as you can see. So, definitely a good kill move. Then we have Dare, which you'll see that a lot of Scythe players tend to overuse this move way too much. Move away from the light attack moves, we now have Recovery and Groundpound. So, Recovery is pretty good. As a Recovery on its own, it's probably not the best. It does spike at a good angle, though. But as far as like trying to recover back on stage, it doesn't have much. So that it's not good as a recovery move, but it is good as an attack. And you'll notice a lot of Scythe players also like to spam recovery. And it's a bit more viable than Dare is, just because, you know, Dare is kind of quick, like the hitbox is quick. But the active frames on recovery are definitely a lot more prominent as a word. And then we have Groundpound. Groundpound is kind of underrated, in my opinion. Sure, it has a very small hitbox. As you can see, that thing is like a straw. It's very difficult to hit. However, it is good in the aspect that you can do it very quickly. Like this, as you can see, you can do almost like an instant sort of Groundpound. Like a reverse like that. So it's very good for killing off stage. Okay, here's where I'm going to deviate from a usual, like, guide. You see, I don't really want to sit in training mode too much more, because it probably gets boring watching me, kill a dummy over and over. So instead, let me just answer some popular questions or things I get asked when I used to coach Scythe, because I did that a lot. Number 1. What is active input and how do I use it efficiently? Active input is a feature unique to Scythe. Basically, on certain moves, depending on what you input, you can get different outcomes each time. The attacks that use this are Sidelight, D-Light, Nair, and Dare. Each one of these attacks has a soft and a hard version, depending on what you input. I'll briefly go over each one. For Sidelight, you can get the soft version if you let go of your directional key, which is either A or D, in time before the attack ends, or if you want the hard version, you just keep holding it. For D-Light, it's the exact same thing. Let go if you want the soft, hold it if you want the hard. For Nair, it's a bit different. If you want the soft version, you have to hold the opposite key as to which you're facing. So for example, if you're facing left and you want the soft version of Nair, you need to hold D. Otherwise, if you let go, you'll get the hard version. And then there's Dare, which neither has a soft nor hard version, but instead has which direction you can throw your opponent to. So if you hold the direction you're facing, you're obviously going to put them the direction you're facing, or if you hold the opposite direction, you'll take them the opposite direction. Do keep in mind that the version where you don't change your opponent's direction does have more force, so it could be looked at as the hard version, but I don't see it that way. If you want to use active input efficiently, just make sure you know which inputs cause which version of the attacks. Number 2. What's the best way to edgeguard with Scythe? In my opinion, you can get your best edgeguarding if you spam D-Light. D-Light has a lot of range, so it puts enough distance between yourself and your opponent to where you can still hit them, but maybe not get punished yourself if you miss. As an added bonus, if your opponent is hugging the wall, the D-Light hitbox can actually clip the top part of your opponent's hitbox, so it makes it even easier to hit. And obviously, if you do hit a D-Light, you don't want to use the soft version of the D-Light, always use the hard version so you can kick them back to off stage. Of course, you don't want to use D-Light the entire time, or else it'll become too predictable. So if you want to use a mix-up, I'd recommend dashing up close to the edge very quickly and using an N-Light Sair, or if they go up high, use Recovery. Number 3. Is it a good idea to use Groundpound? On stage, I really wouldn't recommend it, unless you're in a very specific scenario. However, off stage, that's a different story. When I talked about Groundpound earlier, I said it was very quick, but I didn't talk about what I call the level of commitment. If you use Groundpound for any weapon besides Scythe, you'll see that there's a certain distance that you have to go before you can end the Groundpound, even if you let go of the heavy attack key immediately after using Groundpound. I've deemed this the level of commitment that the weapon has for Groundpound. So then, what's Scythe's level of commitment, you might ask? Well, just as much as a middle school relationship. In other words, absolutely none. There is basically zero time between when you start the Groundpound and when you can end the Groundpound, which makes Scythe Groundpound better than you think. Also, when you're trying to hit Groundpound, you're going to have a better chance of hitting it if you let go of the Groundpound instead of holding it. Because when you let go of the Groundpound, there's actually an increase in the size of the hitbox. Number 4. How do you play offstage with Scythe? That's a pretty hefty question, so I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to myself in the training room to answer that one. That does take me into talking about offstage with Scythe. Now, Scythe is definitely one of the best offstage weapons when it comes to Scythe. Wait. Oh my god. I am way too tired for this. Scythe is one of the better offstage weapons, because it has a lot of, active input, obviously, but it also has a lot of control of your opponent. And you can do those sweet 0 to deaths that you see people do, those clips. So, it's definitely a good weapon to use, but it is also difficult to use in this aspect that if you mess up off stage, you can easily get yourself killed by going for an overextension or something like that. So you kind of need to know how to control your opponent off stage. Now the main attacks you're going to be using off stage with Scythe is going to be Nair, Dare, Sair, and Recovery. Groundpound, I mean, sometimes, but I use that more often in like when I'm going off stage from the stage, like that. So using it all by itself, I don't do too often, but you can. Now each move has, several different roles. However, I say that they fall into one main category most of the time. So let's start with Nair. Nair is, for the most part, when people are trying to get back to the stage, it's a way to hook them back into you. So if you're just, they're trying to get back to stage, which is something that this bot will do a bunch here, I'm sure. yeah, they're trying to get back to stage. You can hook them back, boom, like that. Bring them back, boom, like that. You can constantly just keep them back and, you know, pulling them back to off stage, which, you know, obviously can make them kill themselves by accident, or if, you know, do enough damage, you can do a hard nair, and that could kill them, or whatever you're going to do. But either way, I'd say that the main function of nair off stage is to hook your opponents back into off stage when they're trying to go back onto the stage. Dair can be seen as the same thing, however, I see it more as like a directional shift. Especially against the wall. So if you're, like, let's see, get him against the wall here. So if they're against the wall, you can kind of just, you know, boom. You know, it's a lot like Nair, if you ask me. But I'd say it's easier to use with offstage, or against the wall. The purpose of Sair, I would say, is trying to go for, like, the kill. Like, if you're trying to go for the kill or push them really far back into offstage, then you try to want to go for Sair. Because like I said at the beginning, Sair has, you know, is one of the best kill moves when it comes to Scythe. So if you're trying to keep them, or kill them, or I just killed myself. But if you're trying to get that kill or knock them back a ton, then Sair is your move for that. And then Recovery is your other kill move for off stage. Yeah, Recovery, very good way to kill them. Spike's at a good angle, as I said earlier. You kind of just like run them against the wall like that. Boom. Nothing they can really do. So that's the other kill move. So just to recap here, Dair and Nair are both your moves to control them and pull them around, you know, to bring them back off stage if they're trying to come back to the stage, or pull them off the wall if they're, you know, trying to stay on the wall. And then Sair and Recovery are going to be your kill moves, or just to build up a lot more damage. Number 5. What are the best strings to use for Scythe? I wouldn't say that there's really a best string for Scythe, since everyone has their own unique way of playing Scythe. Unless you copy Sandstorm. For example, a string that a lot of players like to use is the Sair Nair loop. However, I almost never use that one because I personally don't like it. That being said, there are a few strings that I tend to use a lot more than others. For example, one I like to use a lot is soft side light, neutral light, soft nair, hard D light. It's all about finding the strings that you can easily pull off and are really good as well. So I recommend looking at videos that go over all the different strings for Scythe. They'll help you a lot more than I can. Number 6. What are the most common mistakes that Scythe players make? This one's pretty easy. Attacking too much. If you've ever been or watched a Scythe 1v1, you know that it's a whiff fest. People can miss like 10 to 15 attacks in a row and think nothing of it. The most egregious example is when people will only use Dair to get back onto the ground. That's what I meant earlier when I talked about Dair being an overused move. Some people will only use Dair when they're in the air and trying to get back onto the ground. So, be sure to conserve the amount of attacks you use when you're playing Scythe. Of course that's true for any weapon, but it's especially true for Scythe. Number 7. How do I dodge read correctly? I'd say dodge reading is comprised of 2 different aspects. Number 1, searching for patterns in your opponent's dodge movements, and number 2, finding the most likely path for your opponent to take. Whenever you're fighting a new opponent, always take the time to recognize any dodge patterns that they may have. For example, are you finding that they're always spot dodging, or always dodging in or out? If so, you can easily read them just by, well, going for that read. However, you'll find less and less people like that as you move up in the ranks, so that moves us to the second aspect. What is the most likely path for your opponent to take? For example, a path that a lot of players like to take when they're being strung off stage is they'll do a quick fall, or they'll just go for a bunch of panic jumps. So you can read for either of those options and you might get the kill. It takes some time to figure it all out, but you will eventually. And finally, number 8. What's the best way to improve with Scythe? Well, that's the easiest question yet. Just play Scythe. That sounds like a sarcastic answer, but it is the truth. You see, with most other weapons, you can practice in training mode since, there's different combos that you need to perfect, but since Scythe is comprised of no true combos and is all dodge reading, the only way you're going to get better is by playing the game. I remember when I was coaching someone a while back, they told me they were trying to improve their dodge reading by putting the dodge reaction for the bot as random. In case you can't see the problem with that, you're not increasing your dodge reading skills, you're just gambling. When you set the bot AI to do a random dodge reaction, they literally pick one of the 9 different dodge reactions at random and go for it, which has nothing to do with the different aspects of dodge reading. So if you seriously want to improve your dodge reading skills, just play the game more and more, it'll come naturally. And that about does it for my Scythe guide. I know, like I said, it's definitely different than most Scythe guides that I've seen, but I tried my best. And if you have any questions that I left unanswered, make sure to put them in the comments down below and I'll answer as best I can. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe. Alright, I'm out of here.